Morning.
Hi, Dennis. I'm Ming. Richard asked me to join the meeting, and
Yes, yes. Have you got the message that Nigel Shadbolt's not going to be with us till 10:30?
okay.
He's had to go to some other meeting till then. Um,
Yeah, he's a busy man, and it must be.
so I don't know. So wait and see who turns up, but we might decide to restart at 10:30 if there's
Okay, yeah.
what. But so I thought maybe give it till, I don't know, 3 minutes past 10 or something, and see if anyone turns up.
Richard is here.
I am.
Richard, we're just waiting to see who turns up. Did you get? There's a message from Nigel Shadbolt saying he can't be with us till 10:30. So maybe we should come back at 10:30. But I just thought I'd see who turns up.
No, sure. I'm completely happy either way. As I said last week, I've been completely snowed under this week, so I haven't been able to do anything anyway. Well, besides recruit Min, it's my contribution this week.
Sort of game of pass the parcel.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I mean, just looking through the Dropbox folder last week, I was just immediately struck by the fact that it's been amazing working with these visualization guides for the last year. So it will be good to get some input from them.
You start your holiday next week, Richard, is it?
No, unfortunately, I end my holiday next week. This is my holiday.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I've got a workshop on flu vaccine decision making because it's currently the flu vaccine decisions are being made now, and then at the end of that, we're running a workshop on Thursday and Friday on improving the ways we do the flu vaccine decisions. So that's my. In fact, 11 o'clock straight after this, I've got a meeting about that workshop. So. Yeah, holidays aren't really seeming to work for me this year.
Morning, Valerie. I was suggesting maybe we should restart at 10:30 when.
I was wondering about that. Yes, I mean, I don't think I.
If we all sign off, if I leave a message in the chat, will people who log on here see it?
You only see the chat from when you arrive, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm happy to. If you like to make yourselves, if you like to go and make yourselves a cup of coffee, I'm happy to leave this in the corner of my screen. So if anything exciting happens, I can.
Okay, that sounds a good idea. It's either that or sending a.
But I'll send an email. But I'll send an email. To,
oh, we've got Ian as well. Yeah. I did wonder about emailing before, but I wasn't sure. I thought other people might have lots to talk about.
Dennis, hello.
Did you see there's an email from Nigel Shadbolt saying he couldn't be with us till 10:30, so I thought we'd maybe restart then.
Unfortunately, I was just popping in to say that I've got another meeting at 10:30. and I thought it would be good to show my face and say hi. And but unfortunately, it's going to be a bit of a bloodbath, so I can't actually avoid it.
Would it be useful to have Ian's thoughts before he
leaves? Yeah. Do you want to?
In that case, perhaps.
Okay.
Then we can sort of relay them back to Nigel.
Okay. Well, one question: has Glenn shared some of the draft material that I wrote the other week there? I'm not sure whether he has.
When would that be?
Oh dear.
Well,
it was probably about a week and a half ago.
Okay.
Is it in the Dropbox? Is the question?
Well, I was just looking. There's something on data model analysis, life cycles, dependencies perspective that Glenn edited about a week or so back. But
right.
Do you have access to the Dropbox, Ian?
Well, my Dropbox was playing up, and I did actually fix it, I think. So I'm just going to go back in. Yeah. Oh no. Right.
The only thing since last week has been an application of data from Yasmina.
Yeah.
I think the best would be if I just verbally, if I find it, and then just quickly verbally summarize what I had written so far, and you can maybe see where you think it's pushing into the right areas. Recipients.
If you've got something you want to put in the Dropbox and you've got a problem with that at the moment, Ian, you could email it to me and I'll put it in.
Oh, right.
That's a way around.
Here we are. Forward. Yes. How about this? Okay, I've just sent it to you, Dennis.
Okay, thanks.
Right, so this was the response to the initial kind of broad remit material that Glenn circulated from you all about the kind of some of the main sections. So I was just bullet pointing some of the ideas and kind of relevant kind of experiences. I think Glenn said that the basis of your conversation last week, a lot of the material about EPIC would potentially be particular interest to Nigel. EPIC being the Scottish Government consortium where we advise on preparations for, say, foot-and-mouth disease or African swine fever outbreaks, where we've put a lot of effort into developing relationships with key people and actually acquiring data and curating the data ourselves in advance so that we're not dependent on government in the event of an outbreak.
Ian, was that just the one paper, data paper, Ian McKendrick?
Yes.
That's okay. It's now pop that in the Dropbox.
Yeah, I just opened it. Quick look. So sorry, I'm way behind on this. Is EPIC is for animal diseases, is it, Ian?
It is, yes.
Yeah, right.
It's a response. It was a response to the 2001 FMD outbreak and the various government reports that came afterwards. And Scottish Government decided to go down the route of funding a kind of an ongoing consortium, whereas England went for a kind of being a retainer to various kind of universities to be available in the event of an outbreak, which is, again, it's quite it's actually an interesting comparison between the two responses. We've always said it's, the thing is, in the event of a foot-and-mouth disease outbreak, we are all obliged to actually work for Scottish Government. Whereas, for example, I think if there was an FMD outbreak next week, I'm not sure that Warwick would actually be particularly interested in, using their kind of standing, the standing arrangement with DEFRA, because I think they've got other things on their minds.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you. I mean, so has it been used in anger really since it was set up?
Yeah, yes. I mean, probably the biggest one was actually the 2007 FMD outbreak, the one which came from Pirbright, the accidental release of virus.
Yeah, because the original one was what, 2001 or
20 years ago today.
Yeah.
Pretty much just now. So, but then there's been various avian influenza outbreaks since then as well, including one right now. So it's a different kind of response because it's actually not the same need for modelling response for avian influenza, because frankly, it just spreads. There's nothing much you can do about it because it's driven by the wild bird population. But but we have made other types of response during avian influenza type outbreaks. On blue tongue as well. So yes, there have been various kind of occasions. Like we've never been called on for what we might think is classic kind of case of a genuine incursion from overseas of an exotic disease, which then starts to spread massively, like the 2001 or the 1968 kind of outbreaks. But there have been various calls on us for advice over the years. So, the main thing is there's a fair number of the kind of issues I think we've all seen as arising from COVID, which we've been grappling with for years, and hopefully have also, certainly we've made some responses. And where it plays into it is, I think, with the agenda is the desirability of data being properly curated and the infrastructure put in place in advance. Because by the time there's an outbreak, it's too late to cobble something together. So I guess the question is, I missed last week because I had a meeting with the EPHA, who actually do all this stuff in England and Wales, and this is the first time I've managed to make it along. So it's the best approach for me to kind of have a rummage through Dropbox and see where this stuff and this material could best fit in, and kind of draft it up into a more detailed form.
That sounds good. I mean,
Yes,
Nigel is sort of running this. There's in the Dropbox, I'm just trying to look back. So there's this data challenges chapter structure paper dated the end of January, the most recent versions I can see. So that's got the overall structure that Nigel mapped out. So I guess that would be a good place to start. And then,
Yes. So if what you're suggesting is just relates to one of those sections, perhaps the thing to do would be to do a sort of redraft for that section, including your stuff. But if
Yep.
it cuts across them, you may just do whatever format seems sensible, just as a possibly leave it to Nigel where to slot it in. Or
Yeah. The other thing is, I mean, I think in terms of some of the skills, I don't know whether there's still a section to be on skills, and Glenn kind of, I was discussing it. So there's a schema that I wrote at a fairly early point within with Richard and the SCRC, which kind of details various roles that we thought at that point would be useful, as we were trying to form the consortium. So again, it's not so much that as being material for, saying, I'm not saying we got it right. What I'm saying is that in the heat of battle, we actually kind of did try to think of everything we could possibly think of. So it might be quite a good kind of document to challenge some of the other ideas with, because I haven't shared that yet because I wanted to bounce it off Richard and the rest of them, but I don't think there's any reason why we can't share that type of document.
No, I wouldn't have thought so. I mean, I think that yeah, I mean, there are a few of these things that we put together to try to sum up our thoughts about this. And obviously, we're going to be doing more of that. Well, we are currently doing more of that kind of work as our data pipeline grant progresses, which has just started, as I was saying last week.
Yeah. So, okay, I'll progress that. It's been a bit crazy, but I'll try and dive into that later today. And unfortunately, as I said, I need to dive out now to discuss the outbreak of avian influenza in game birds in Fife with the relevant Scottish government people.
has that just happened?
Earlier this week, or I suppose it was actually the very end of last week that we got wind of it.
Is that wild birds or?
No, it's a hatchery for game birds. I mean, I've never actually visited any of them, but apparently that so that you're hunting and fishing and shooting type chaps can go off and shoot lots of grouse. They actually have got hatcheries to kind of bring up, hatch eggs and get small birds, which they then transport out into the country, and then leave them to.
Something that's on a very large scale, that there are more birds. I'm trying to remember whether something about it was saying there were more of these birds hatched for shooting than there were, and I can't remember whether all birds or all land birds in the country or something, but it was certainly large scale.
Yeah, so
it's surprising really that there are all these alien species. I mean, if there was some species of wild grouse and half a dozen ended up here by mistake, there'd probably be leap to action stations, alien invasion or something. But the shooting industry can import millions without anyone sort of batting an eyelid, really.
Yeah. So the actual hatchery has got an outbreak.
Yeah.
So there's an exclusion zone across this big chunk of Fife, and they're all being. Well, I think they've all been gasped now. So
can you stop the wild birds coming in? I mean, if you have how do you have an exclusion zone? I mean, you can have an exclusion zone on the ground, but do you have to try and have an exclusion zone in the air as well?
Well, the chief vet, she actually introduced the one thing you can do is try to minimise the contact between domestic birds and wild birds, and she actually put that on just before Christmas. In the light of what was happening across Europe and south of the border. So basically across Scotland, white people with, if someone has some chickens in the garden.
I was going to say, we've got chickens in our garden, and I think this kind of thing, the restriction is you then are supposed to keep them.
Bring them in.
Indoors. That's right. Because that's all you can do. The big problem is the avian influenza strains appear to have done some reassorting So basically, it's actually high pathogenicity, avian influenza now, rather than the not so worrying one. Not that it's massively worrying, but it's obviously not quite so nice to have high pathogenicity influenza floating around the system. So anyway, it's very nice to see you all, and apologies for being not really on the ball on this. But the main thing is that I'm very interested, and I've drafted up some stuff, and I'll try and now integrate it into the main
Absolutely
text.
great.
Okay, thanks, Ian.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Nice to see you all, and
You take care.
so hope Jenny's good, Dennis. Take care. Bye.
Right.
So, is the plan to catch up on other things or make a quick coffee for 10 minutes and come back at past?
I think make a quick cup of coffee and come back for 1/2 shall we?
That's good.
I'll drop Nigel email. So I'll just.
We've
I'll
got
shoot
an email from Jasmina. She's going to try and join us at 1/2 as well. She's stuck in
Okay.
another meeting,
Okay, well,
but so you could reply to
I'll
that one.
copy to her.
perhaps.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll
All
do
right.
that, make
See
myself-
you
See
soon.
you at 1:30.
Okay.
See
Thank
at
you.
1/2. Oh. Yeah. Hi, Ben.
Morning, Dennis. Sorry I'm late. I assumed that you were starting at 10:30 today, and didn't realise you
Yes, I think we
carried on at
were
10.
hoping to have Nigel and Jasmine about now. So I thought give
Yeah,
them a little. I shall turn off my video and just sit here drinking my coffee and eating my coffee cake.
I've got the coffee, but not the cake. So.
Sorry, I can't offer you a slice.
Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. Are we back from coffee or just reconvened?
I'm just still eating the cake, but I'm here.
We float from one pandemic meeting to another. I just have no control over my own diary at the moment. It's very discombobulating when you're summoned by the university silver group. This was, of course. Yeah. Anyway, I'm sure we all suffer under some of the same. Hi, Min. Very good to see you.
Good to see you too, Nigel. Yeah.
Where'd the conversation gotten to? Just update me on what the previous half hour was focusing on. Yeah.
We just had Ian McKendrick popped in, and he's put a little document. I think it's mainly about his experiences with the EPIC. I think it's called a consortium in Scotland for being alert for animal bird outbreaks.
Yes.
So he's put in a data paper, ianmckendrick.docs, which you can see in the.
I've got that. Yeah.
And he said that what he'll do is that now once he's got access to Dropbox, he'll have a look through what we've got there already and try and edit some stuff into a form that might fit in. So.
Great. And I think Jasmine
Valerie,
was going to.
Sorry, Valerie, did he say anything else?
No, well, I mean, sorry, he did, but
Yeah.
I think it's in the paper that he's put in. He was talking a bit about the skills, and there was another document. Well, Richard would be able to say better than me on that he was going to add as well, which sounded interesting. I thought from the perspective of the EPIC, the interesting thing was that Scotland had gone down a different route from England in terms of, keeping some mechanism for surveillance going, rather than,
Mm-hmm.
and that if we could, I thought it would be quite nice to be able to sort of try and pinpoint the pluses and minuses of that, which, I mean, if this has been going it was set up 20 years ago, so one might be able to say something about, that the advantages that preparedness of having a continuous system like that brings.
Richard, what was the lived experience of Epic in terms of having all your stuff pre-positioned and?
Well, I mean, so I should say first that I'm not part of Epic.
No.
So I was coming from the outside, but Epic were obviously a large part of our consortium. And the real thing that struck me having them come in was exactly this kind of stuff from Ian, that they've been thinking for a long time about how to improve the flow of data from government into the consortium so that they can get hold of the right data at the right time in the right formats and their experience with those specific data sets. And so obviously with this, it was all human disease stuff. And so we didn't have the right data sets, but they had the experience to back them up of, okay, well, we're going to need to have the animal movement rather than the human movement data. And so we need to work out a process for getting that from the farm to, through government to us in a controlled way so that we have it, in safe havens if we need to or whatever, and that was really, it was quite eye-opening to see that they really thought this through. And I suspect, without any experience in the English system, that seemed to be much less there in place in England because there wasn't the same consortium approach. It was a kind of standing capacity that people had agreed they would come in, as and when they were needed. So I think that was the big thing that struck me about it, was that that seemed to be a big advantage from.
That would be quite a nice feature of the chapter, wouldn't it, to have that experience from a very, from an analogous but different field, and from an administration where they took a different line. I can see that.
And it's particularly interesting because, of course, they didn't do that. The Scottish government didn't do that for human diseases. So when it came to this, the Scotland and England were in the same boat from the point of view of the COVID.
So well, two questions. I mean, I think for human diseases, England had the arrangement with the Imperial and the London School, didn't it? So they had some sort of setup, I suppose. But why did Scotland go a different route on human diseases than for animal ones? Was it too big, or?
I mean, I don't have all the answers there, but what I recall from the discussions when we just, gossiping about this at the start, was that it was actually something to do with the breakdown of responsibilities through the Scottish government and UK and things like this, that it didn't actually quite make sense to whereas on the animal disease, on the animal side, it was all totally devolved. There were issues that meant that decisions had to be made at a UK level for human disease related stuff, and so it didn't make sense to do the same thing. I mean, they may revisit that obviously now, but at the time, I think it was something to do with that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that'd be great. And is Ian he's going to throw in a little bit more to the pot? Is he, in that regard? Yeah, he said he would. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And also that there was another document that maybe it's there, but that he was going to share on the skills.
Yeah. So what we developed based on again some work that they started doing with Epic was basically a few flows of how the data would be taken from raw data through domain experts and data processors and people. So there was basically identifying all the different roles that would be necessary to curate raw data coming in when we didn't know, for new data types that we didn't know about, like, random stuff. I mean, nearly everything was new to us from the human disease standpoint, but what different jobs you would need, roles you would need in order to integrate those data into a kind of sensible flow for the modelers.
Good. Well, that's great. Thank you. And Jasmina, I think you've just joined as well. You were in a similar you were in a similar kind of bind to myself. And I just noticed you've expanded somewhat the document in the Dropbox as well from our discussions. Yeah.
So I have added more bulletin points and sort of put a bit of words in, but I haven't actually joined the sentences and written the paragraph. That's something that's still pending.
No, I
There
think
were
we're all
two
in that
documents.
position. Don't worry.
Yeah. So there were two documents, and I've kind of one was making notes as we spoke last time, and one was the one before. So I've merged those and deleted one of them just to tidy up a little bit. So what is it says in the brackets to be expanded? It needs that. That needs to be done, and I think well, I need to do that for next week, and it will be done. So apologies, it's sort of busier than I anticipated this week.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, okay, that's yeah. And then again, we've got training and skills in there. There's some common themes here. It is going to be about stitching material together.
I think what we were just talking about when I joined in around the sort of the epic data, I think that highlights the needs, the last point that is made there around possibly training different types of data scientists to analyze the data, something we talked about last time, because it's not going to be maybe the way that, because modelers have we talked about this last time, modelers have a way to input the data in order to, because they've done this all the time. Now, as new data become available, there's a question of whether somebody wrangles the data in a certain way for the models to be used as they're used to, or adjusts the models to be absorbing the new data sets. And I don't know which way we will go. I just have to kind of wait and see, I think, on that. But there is definitely a challenge around which path we go.
Yeah. And just this week, we've seen the effect of a reanalysis of some of that linked patient data, the Open Safely plus other work where they've suddenly decided there's 1.5 million more people who might need to be shielded, etc. That's been quite dramatic. That's been quite interesting to see that that retrospective kind of reanalysis of where risk is. And of course, it just reminds you that this is like it's a constant iteration towards understanding what.
But I mean, I think this is really a good point, Nigel, because in a previous study, we would be always studying something that had finished and we knew everything about it. Like when we are looking at modeling of diseases in humans. So now we are still learning about this, and we wrote about having like a really early modeling and a later modeling. But I think the later modeling is an ongoing modeling, and it remains challenging. I mean, we model 2 strains. Do we need to model 4 strains, or sort of a coupled strain? And what will we don't even yet model waning of immunity, and is that different to waning of vaccination immunity versus a waning of a disease immunity, right? So yep. Questions like that, we haven't even brushed the surface of understanding that, because we can't yet.
Very good.
I guess that's the idea of the data model life cycle that we've tried to talk on and touch on in one of the sections, and trying to constantly do this real-time analysis and update our knowledge as we go along as data becomes available. But yeah, I think there's huge challenges still remaining there in terms of actually getting these infrastructures in place for our current pandemic.
Just on that, I guess, Dennis and Valerie, I mean, in a certain sense, the program, I say it's not well behaved, but you can't start and then complete it and then anything just moves on to this next stage. That it's ongoing reflection of practice. In terms of the publication as well, I suppose it will need to reflect on the fact that this is just an ongoing set of insights, and some of the original work done across the summer will be being reinterrogated in the light of what we're discovering right now. Is that being reflected in the other pieces of work as far as you see?
I'm not quite sure what you're meaning there, Nigel. Sorry.
I suppose what I'm saying is what's the reflection point in that we can keep on writing, because there's a lot coming in that's material to this challenge, particularly around data have to kind of reflect and say, well, this is as much certainty as we've got at this point. We do understand that some of the assumptions at the beginning around data availability have been being re-examined. There are new opportunities for pulling new data in. Just to reflect, I suppose, the dynamic nature of the modeling in this domain in particular. It seems that some of the fundamental questions may remain the same, but new challenges are coming out all the time, which require very different view on what you model and how you model.
Yeah, no, Nigel, in that respect, I mean, one thing that we were Hans Hesterbeck, who's offered to give a sort of overall view of the drafts, was suggesting that we should be, where possible, referring back to how we saw things in 2015. And I just feel that if you're talking about perspectives and how your perspective changes in a rapidly moving situation, it would be quite good to look back 5 years to how people saw the sort of problems before the pandemic came along. And if you look in the Dropbox, the 2015 papers are in the Dropbox, and the advantage in the Dropbox version is that they're all numbered in the order they appeared in the journal, and the two data ones are 17 and 18. So
that's really, thank you for that.
So I think if it would be, I think probably you as the coordinator or the person who should do this, to look back at the kind of structure that people were, the kind of, not just what people were referring to, but the sort of structure, the way they were seeing the problems before the pandemic came along, and just see, were they being prescient, or had they in a sense got it all wrong in not appreciating what the problems would be, though I'm presumably they're informed by previous epidemics, of course.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Min, it's good to see you. I hadn't had you introduce yourself and caught up with what we're doing here previously. Yeah.
Okay, my name is Ming Chen. I'm a Nigel's colleague back in Oxford, and I've been doing data visualization and data science for many years, and I think Richard was one who introduced me to the SARC operation last May, and that was really exciting in some way, and we have some opportunities to really help out. I guess from the theoretical point of view thinking, and I knew immediately the scenario which you talk about is the model. Unlike previously, all the modeling was done on the post hoc basis, but this modeling is during the pandemic, and so it's likely the model will require a constant change. So you treat it as a model as an optimization process. And we also know, as a computer scientist, any optimization process for the modeling is what we call it is an NP problem. So NP problem is fundamentally you cannot attack it by brute force. So you really need the human intelligence in the way to looking for the best way to do it. The one thing I observed, which is a very, very common situation in the visualization, people usually think visualization is for dissemination purpose, which typically most of academic would think in that way. And the idea is to have the results of whatever you do and then present to the public in some way. And in this pandemic, we have a fair amount of good disseminated visualization from government, from Johns Hopkins in USA, or from various of the UK's Office of National Statistics also has been doing a good job of BBC and so on. But that's for public, and the modeling scientists don't have adequate support in the way they need to observe the data. They need to observe data ideally to help them to notice the model may not perform in the exactly way as they expected, or some little inside of the model, whether there's a certain parameter, maybe sensitive, oversensitive, and various other things. And so all we try to do is to, as I mentioned to Richard at the very early stage, is say, if we can help modeling scientists, allow them to observe the data quicker, including data coming from as the inputs as well as the data during the modeling process. And the goal was to try to create a a environment, and I called modeling scientists could almost like act like a stockbroker, can see the data immediately whenever they want to see, and which is currently not the case. And so if you look in the process we observe at that time, and the modeling scientist has to get a spreadsheet and plot out, there's no way they can every day of dealing with the data and look at how the model matches with the data and so on. So that so the cost for human on the modeling side was just too heavy. And when the cost is heavy, it meant the modeling scientists are not seeing enough data, not seeing enough how the model behaves. And if they do want to do it, they use a lot of, they waste a lot of cognitive energy to deal with the nitty-gritty small things, and so not spend the time on thinking. So the entire idea for visualization was to do it.
So you're currently working in engineering on some of these challenges, over in the Department of Engineering on some of these challenges, right?
So we organized in fact, we don't have enough resources. We just put all the UK's, most of UK resources visualization together to help the Scottish consortium. We did some, we did a fair amount of work. We largely is try to show what we can do if there were enough resources.
I'm going to just, just before we perhaps get on to some of the other elements of our to-do list. Jasmina, is that something you recognize in the modeling world, that visualization is actually not, you don't have the breadth and wealth of tools you might want?
In terms of understanding visualization of outputs, or in terms of visualization, because one thing that has happened through this pandemic is people have started to make user-friendly interfaces a lot more than they had in the past. And I think that was driven by trying to communicate modeling to the general public. And I think that's useful, but I personally think a lot of the time and energy has gone into that, where, you know, at the end of the day, people who want to really understand this can run the Python back code, or, you know, whatever language back code is, and try to understand it. So it's a balance. There has been, if that was what the question was asking.
Yeah, I know, it's to understand where we might locate this issue about. It is an interesting point where the visualization challenge in dealing with data actually is going to get dealt with in any part of this, and where we might want to locate it. I mean, it's.
But I mean, a lot of people, like, for example, I think Our World in Data, I'll say again, is a good example of visualization things. But then there has been, and I don't remember what the title is, so some people from UCL and across other places have made another dashboard which literally picks up the data that's already in other dashboards and puts them in a different format. And I don't think that's useful. I think that is just a way of finding themselves useful to do something, whereas there is really no need for it. So that's what I mean. It's a balance of what are you trying to achieve with the visualization of data.
Okay, Richard.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that I'm going to mess up the words here, Ben, so I apologize in advance. But this disseminative visualization of trying to get the information out to people is something that kind of we all understood, but we weren't very good at it, and people have got much better at it. I think the thing that I've really learned this year is how useful it can be to have somebody helping to visualize the kind of partial products of the models and kind of bits of output and getting better ways of understanding what the model outputs are actually saying whilst you're running them, to understand what's going on. And I think that I certainly hadn't appreciated that was a thing at all, really. I mean, obviously sometimes I'd plot graphs of, you know, something against time or something to see what's happening, but I think that it's been really interesting to me, the idea of visualization as a tool to help me better understand where my model is currently going wrong. Rather than as a tool for explaining to the general public or to policymakers or whatever, which we all understood.
Yeah, I mean, what we might want to do is, if you could just drop something in, I mean, whether it sits here or elsewhere, I think it's important that we don't acknowledge the importance of this kind of aspect of the challenge going forward. So we've got more material coming in, but we've still got to write the overall narrative and pull stuff together, and that's partly on me. Dennis sent round a useful set of guidelines for the area organisers at the weekend. Anything that you would like to add over and above what's in there, Dennis?
Not at the moment, no. I mean, it could be an iterative process when we see what we end up with.
I mean, we're as editors, we're going to be trained next week. Next Wednesday, we have a training session. So once we've been trained to be editors, maybe we will have some more information. But at the moment, it was really just to try and, the letter was just to try and set out a few deadlines, give people things to aim for and so on. And preempt a few questions that people might have.
And in terms of the core group convening as we can pretty regularly and trying to keep the information flowing in, Richard and Ben, are you happy to be able to kind of enrich and expand the material you've been working on?
Yeah, I did a little bit of work on that this morning, in half hour before you arrived.
Jasmina, you very usefully suggested where the expansions on yours are, and I think once I've put some of the stuff around the data engineering, we can look to pull those elements together as well. That would be good.
So maybe Nigel, you and I can work on that together over the week.
Yeah. Let's try and do that. That would be useful.
Yeah, as I said last week, I really have very little time until the 1st of March, but from then I'm free. So I'm sorry about that. But
great, Richard. Well, that's it. 1st of March.
First of March is very close. We'll leave everything.
It is.
All come together rapidly at the end.
I'm sure that'll be true.
That could be true. Just in light of that, I just want to check on availability in the next little while. So where are we now? I'm just getting lost as to where we are. Next Thursday is a clear slot, 10 till 11. Are people okay with that? I mean, can we try and commit to that by and large? I've got.
Could we possibly move it to 10:30 if that suits people? Because I always seem to be having a meeting that's meant to finish at 10, but continues.
Well, if we do it at 10:30, let's do. If people are people okay with that? Does 10:30 work? It's just that people might have to drop off at the top of the hour, but I mean, at least we can all convene at the same time. I think it's important at this point.
Or we keep it at 10 if that suits people, and then who can join when joins.
Either way, what are people? If people have the slot, let's keep the slot. What do people feel? Min.
I just let you know, I dropped a archive report of the visualization operation during the last year. It's called the RampViz in the paper folder. And if anyone interested to have a look to see what we have done may be useful and how they will be potentially featured in the book in some way.
That's it. You put that in where? Where have you
it's already under the papers. IDP.
Maybe put it in the data folder.
I can also do another copy there.
Just so we remember. I mean,
okay.
It might be. Yeah, okay.
No,
it's a chapter 08 date. Is that one suggestion?
Timing. I do think it makes sense to have a time where people all are there at the start, because you can always have in the introductions, people can say something like, I have to go in half an hour, in which case you can make sure you discuss their part of the thing first. Whereas if you try and do it to where you come in at different times and all leave together at the end, you're trying to work backwards in time to keep the meeting organized.
So keep 10 o'clock there.
No, so keep 10:30, I think.
I think my suggestion is 10:30.
10:30 is fine.
Okay.
10:30. Because you're a pivotal part of this, Jasmina. So we let's do that. Let's do that.
And if we try and think of it as a 1 hour meeting, so where our diaries are.
Yeah.
Obviously.
And I was wondering whether, so as are we not ready to kind of put it all together and see how it aligns?
You and I should try and see what we can pull of the modeling elements, your stuff, the life cycle platforms and the stuff that I've been working on. Let's try and see if we're going to stitch that together over the weekend. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So maybe you and I could talk even at the weekend. I'm planning to work. I mean, sorry. Yeah. If that's okay with you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
We'll meet at 10:30 next week for sure in
Sounds good.
plenary. Okay. Thank you ever
Okay.
so much.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye.
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 Thanks. Bye.